Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the White Coat Club. My name is Nicole, and I'm one of the counselors at Moon Prep. Today, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Ryan, and he's one of our professors for rising researchers. So we're going to be chatting with him about his experience and his professional experience, and then as well as his rising researchers course that will be taking place this summer. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more BSMD medical school research content. Hi, Dr. Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Nicole. Yeah, it's great to be on here. I'm super looking forward to chatting with you today.
Awesome. We appreciate it. So we'll start off with this. For those that don't know you, how do you describe typically what you do in a few sentences?
Yeah, so I am currently an adjunct professor of physics at Purdue University Fort Wayne, and I'm also the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity startup that specializes in post-quantum cryptography. So, kind of in summary, my interests are covering a wide variety of topics from the search for life beyond Earth to black holes and quantum computing.
Awesome. And I'm excited to kind of break that down a little bit later on. But thank you for the basics so far. So I guess my follow-up to that would be what kind of got you into that whole space and physics realm in the first place?
Yeah, so ever since I was a kid, really as long as I can remember, I would ask why. My mom likes to say that that was my favorite word as a kid. And in particular, when I was around 10 years old, I remember looking up at the stars and wondering, what's out there? Are we alone in the universe? Or what causes the stars to twinkle? I had so many questions and so much that I wanted to learn. And it was sort of a journey that's developed over the course of many years. I became very interested in Einstein's work in middle school and high school, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to pursue studies in physics and astrophysics in college and for my PhD.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, in talking with a lot of our students on the counseling side, that's kind of cool that you said that your favorite question or your favorite word was why as a kid. Because a lot of the times when we're talking to BSMD students and students that want to get into the medical field or, just the STEM field, they're always saying, like, as a young child, they were always asking questions and asking why. And like from a young age, always having that curiosity. So, um, it's kind of cool to make that connection because it is a little bit different than some of our students who are looking to go into the medical field, but it is still kind of coming from that same stem of wanting to know more.
Yeah,
um,
exactly. I mean, I really feel like something that connects all of STEM together, or all of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is our passion for understanding the universe around us, whether that is focused on the human body or the world beyond Earth. And really, for a lot of my interests, there's the merger between those two. Astronomy and biology really go hand in hand when we're thinking about life beyond Earth.
yeah, no, that's a really good point. So your research topic for your summer course, which we'll talk about in a little while more, is searching for life in the universe, the intersection of astronomy and biology. Essentially, we just said.
Yeah.
So, what is something about, I guess, astrophysics that people or even students might misunderstand?
Students will ask about or become confused about is really about black holes sucking in different material. And really, in space, there is no pressure. So when we're looking for life in the universe, a lot of students also will think about what happens with black holes, like in the movie Interstellar. And if there's a black hole at the center of our galaxy, why is it that the Earth hasn't been sucked up into that black hole? Or if we're far enough away, does that mean that there can't be any other life in the universe? That's a question that I was posed at the end of a library lecture. So there's a lot of different interesting things that people think about astrophysics. A lot of it comes from a good place, some of it comes from some misunderstandings. But really, I'd say the most frequent one I get is about black holes sucking, whereas again, black holes are don't suck. They're really cool. They're really phenomenal objects, and due to the vacuum of space, there's nothing really for them to suck in a typical vacuum pressure sense anyway.
Wow, I feel like I just learned a lot. That is
Awesome.
that's great. I never, when I was thinking of these questions for you, I never would have thought that, but that's awesome. I'm sure our listeners are gonna be interested to hear more about that and, you know, more about the topic in general. Um, so going back to your bio, when I was looking at, your experience and everything, I know that you mentioned in your bio on the Rising Researcher site that you've mentored students from ages 11 to 77. So what would be kind of your philosophy for teaching such a wide range of learners?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun working with such a disparate grouping of individuals, everywhere from middle school students that have been interested in quantum physics philosophy to medical doctors and retired lawyers that want to dive into astrophysics and who knows, maybe become the next Einstein. But what I would say that really unifies my philosophy in working with that wide variety of students is really trying to make sure that they're set up for their own success. So, a major part of working with students kind of universally is teaching them how to read scientific papers for themselves, not just me didactically mentioning what a paper says, but helping them learn how to dive into abstracts, how to take a look at conclusion sections, how to be efficient at skimming scientific papers themselves, and therefore allow, again, not just a wide range of ages, but really a wide range of different interests, helping students explore what they're most passionate about.
So they're learning this skill set, like you focus on them learning the skill set of understanding how to really read research papers and intersect research papers, and then obviously also on that specific topic as well. So you're kind of doing essentially two things at once. Is that what you?
No, that's true. I do admittedly include some lectures, so I do make sure that students are understanding the material or the background
Yeah.
that's necessary for exploring those research papers for themselves. I do try to make sure that when I'm lecturing, there are frequent pauses and ways to keep the students engaged, whether that's through different reflection questions or more of active learning methodologies where they take a pause and try to explore and like highlight and underline the key phrases or topics that they want to learn more about, so that's still not sort of a typical maybe high school classroom setting, but really something that is follows the best practices of education research.
Got it. Yeah, I've on the college counseling side, I've worked with students who are in other research programs sometimes, and while they're analyzing the papers, they kind of sometimes don't have that base level of knowledge yet. So I think it's good to kind of have both. Like you said, you incorporate lectures and you're making sure they have that background knowledge first, or during, as they're going along, so that way they can understand or better understand while they're analyzing the literature. That's
Yep,
great.
that's the idea. Yep.
Awesome. Um, so kind of similar, many of your students are basically starting off with no experience, right? And then they're going on to publish. So, what's your secret to kind of unlocking that type of potential in a student to get them ready?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nicole. And I would say the key aspects of publishing research in astronomy and astrophysics, there are kind of two different types of papers. One is a literature review, which is also frequent in the biological or medical field. And the key way for students to unlock their potential for literature reviews is being seated with the kind of core knowledge that they need to grasp onto different topics. and then being given the useful tools, whether that's efficiently reading scientific papers, learning how to use Google Scholar to find their own professional references, using a reference management tool like Zotero to really set themselves up to be budding professional researchers. Or, on the other hand, aside from literature reviews, there are also empirical or quantitative research papers. And I've worked with a large number of students that have had no coding background to the point that they have been able to perform their own analysis and leveraging so-called vibe coding, like I've been doing with a couple of Google engineers now, actually, has been very, very useful. But in either case, the key ingredient for students that really want to learn how to code themselves to the point of publication is starting out with small, small steps. It's kind of like if you see this gigantic Lego sculpture and you think, well, how the heck did someone build that? It all starts brick by brick. And same thing with students that want to publish. They just need the basic building blocks that they can then build off of and with enough time invested lead to a publication.
I really like that analogy. I think a lot of our students, when they first come to us on the counseling side of things, they want to get published. They want that on their resume and they want to jump into it. And I think that's their mentality is they want to just jump into it and kind of like get it done, like a check mark on, their list. But like you said, building step by step, brick by brick, just like slowly, gradually gaining your skills, like working them, and then like getting to that point. It's more of a slow process versus kind of an instant gratification type of thing.
Yeah, it is something where there are many steps along the way, but I do like to try to point out to students that by breaking things down into small tasks, they
Mm-hmm.
can still feel accomplished as they complete each one. So hopefully
Yeah.
it's actually a mixture. They don't get the instant gratification of the paper right away for sure. There's really no way around that, which is part of the reason why I think that does help them stand out in their college applications, having a publication. But on the other hand, by completing those little tasks along the way, they can notice that they're making progress.
Yeah, almost like build momentum off of these little wins, right? And you're absolutely right. That's why it's such a great thing to have on your resume because they know these colleges know that it is such a lengthy task and there's a lot of
Mhm.
work that goes into it. So yeah, but I think a lot of our students kind of they get frustrated. So it's great that you during the process kind of set them up for success by putting in these little wins along the way to help them build that momentum. That's great.
Yep, that's the idea for sure. Yep.
Awesome. Um, okay, so kind of going back to summer research and rising researchers. So, um, what's some advice that you would give to either a high school or a college student who wants to get more involved in scientific research?
Yeah, I mean, for high school and undergraduate students, there's a variety of different opportunities that they could explore. For high school students in particular, for that want to get into scientific research, they can start with science fairs. And that's often a really great way to explore a topic. And it won't always be publishable, but they'll go through the scientific process of forming a hypothesis, performing tests for that hypothesis, and coming to some analysis and conclusions. And so that's really helpful going through that research process. For college students, I would say that really they can leverage the professors at their institution and just try to get any sort of research that they can. When I was an undergrad, I knew I wanted to study astronomy, but the very first physics or astronomy course that I taught was instructed by someone from a laser lab. And even though I wasn't really particularly interested in doing research on lasers, I still asked him about doing research. And it still helped me learn that process of experimentation, analysis, conclusions that I admittedly didn't have through science fairs as a kid, as a middle school or high school student. So both of those are great. And then, of course, I think that Rising Researchers is a great way to add a bit more structure to that. But really performing any sort of scientific study and learning the scientific process is really, really helpful for building that scaffolding and then really being able to hit the ground running when they do have a bit more of a direct mentor.
Yeah. So, making connections and not being afraid to get involved, like kind of just jumping in or really seeing what's available. Like you said, if it's middle school or high school, if they have science fairs, like not being afraid to just kind of go for it and see how it goes and make connections along the way. And then, in the college route, really kind of leaning on the staff and the professors there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what's something that students will get in your program that they would not, like in the Rising Researchers summer program, that they wouldn't get in a regular classroom?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, Nicole, not a lot of high school students or even not a lot of college students will have access to a astrophysicist or someone that has my particular skill set or range of background experiences. So, for one thing, and probably the most important item, is that they have a mentor that's dedicated to their success, not just in terms of doing their research, but really via Rising Researchers, understanding how they can take the next step in their own academic journey. I've worked with a number of different high school students now who have been accepted at prestigious institutions for college like Oxford or Cambridge. On the undergraduate student side, quite a few of my undergraduate students have been accepted for prestigious internships, as well as earning different jobs at institutions, from machine learning engineers to going on to grad school. So, aside from really that mentorship aspect, I'd say that the most useful thing that they gain from my program is learning how they can not only perform literature reviews for themselves, but also kind of the next steps that they can take and how to leverage AI in a really more rigorous way than what I think a lot of people have been exposed to so far. I mentioned earlier that I'm currently working with two Google engineers who are
Mm.
really at the forefront of using AI in research. And therefore, students are developing a really, I'd say, hot skill item right now in learning how to use AI in a very productive way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know it's all happening pretty quickly. My background is not at all in research. Um, so kind of sometimes, a little bit of it is I almost feel like I should take a class because a little bit is lost on me. Um, but it's such a transferable skill. And like you said, your background and your experience is really going to lend toward getting these students to have an amazing summer experience and really just having that insight from you and that mentorship from you and even making that connection. Like you said, a lot of your former mentees have gone on and gotten amazing jobs, amazing experiences. So um, you have a lot of great connections and you've done a lot of great work. So you can kind of lend that to them, which is great. So I know Rising Researchers is so happy to have you on their team for this year. So, and it's special too because it is such an introductory course. So
Mhm.
I know some of these other, science programs are a little bit more toward older students, and sometimes it's they only want 11th and 12th graders. They only want 12th graders, and if you have to go on campus. But Rising Researchers is unique because there's no age limit, and it is, labeled as introductory. But I think it's a fast-paced course, even though our mentors are really dedicated for students who are really intro and are able to kind of push them through it and help them through it. Um, and it's remote, so you're not worrying about kind of getting different places or traveling or anything like that. So we've had some really great reviews for it so far in the last few years, so I'm really excited for this course as well. um
Yeah, that's very true, Nicole. I just want to follow up on that item, and especially regarding your question about what kind of sets rising researchers apart, or maybe that's not exactly what your question was, but regarding research experiences for high school and undergraduate students, on the high school side, as you pointed out, for some of the most prestigious programs, like a lot that are run through MIT or Caltech, they only take juniors. And they're also very, very competitive. So I really encourage the students that I work with to apply to those. But it's kind of one of those the rich get richer unfortunate experiences is that in order to get research experience, you kind of need some research experience. And therefore, starting with a program like Rising Researchers can be really, really helpful. On the undergrad side, I should have mentioned that I went to a very small institution called Wheaton College. It's a liberal arts institution where we had really small classroom settings. When I did my PhD at the University of Michigan, it was almost impossible for undergraduate students to get the time of day of a professor, let alone do research with him or her. And in particular, there was only one professor in the astronomy department that was willing to work with undergraduate students. So being able to work with a mentor for a student that's never done research before, that really helps pave the way for them being able to do additional research or just exploring their passion.
Yeah, accessibility, absolutely. Um, like I said, a lot of them are super competitive, and a lot of our students apply to these super competitive things, and it's great to kind of have um professors and with Rising Researchers team who have been so great. So we're very thankful for that. Um, because it can get really demanding. It can get really hard to kind of get that experience. So then you have to kind of go different avenues to find. So there's only one professor that would take research students. So having to like navigate other avenues to kind of get similar things. So I think keeping an open mind as well is probably really important.
Yeah, for sure. And just having some research experience under their belt, having a publication that shows that not only did they try out research, but they really went
Hmm.
through the full experience from cover to cover really helps them in the subsequent rounds. So I
Yeah.
worked with one
Yes.
student who applied to MIT and applied to Cosmos for summer internships as a high school student, and nothing quite stuck. Working with me the following summer, he was granted a Air Force Research Lab internship acceptance or award,
Amazing.
and a lot of other students I've worked with have found similar benefits in turn, whether it's internships or again jobs, college applications, PhD
Yeah.
applications.
And it's so similar even for the medical school applications and the BSMD applications. Like, why are you have to kind of prove why would they take you unless you have done some research, to know that
Yeah,
you kind of have to prove yourself a little bit first. So having this introductory option is so great, and then you can kind of prove to them that you're applying for the Cosmos or for these other programs because you've done some research before, and it's already on your resume. So
yeah, and actually, it's kind of interesting that a lot of students that perform astronomy research, at least at the college or undergrad level, are applying to MD programs, believe it or not, because there are many, many more medical students than there are physics or astronomy students. My postdoc supervisor was at Johns Hopkins University, and he had a lot of pre-med students that did research with them because they wanted to stand out. They did medical related research, but they realized that in applying to MD schools, a lot of other students have medical research on their resume. And so that's definitely
hmm.
important to demonstrate their interest, but having something that helps them stand out a little bit more, I think
Yeah,
is, again, for astronomy, that's much more of my passion, but it could be useful for a wide variety of topics.
absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many transferable skills. The reason I say this a lot to students when it comes to shadowing, but I think it's the same regard. When you're shadowing, it doesn't, you don't need to shadow in the field that you specifically want to go into. They'll teach you everything you need to know in medical school. Just because you have experience in that field doesn't make you a better candidate. Having the experience in the field is what's important. So I think research too, it's like so many transferable skills in how to do research, how to perform research, how to be a good researcher, regardless of the topic. So, future MDs, broaden your horizons, figure out literally and figuratively, I guess, see what else is out there, some other topics that you could, do research in, and you'll absolutely have those same transferable skills into that more of MD field or realm, when the time comes, for sure. Because yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's going to have MD research
Mhm.
typically. Yeah.
And you never know where the world's going to take you. Maybe
Yeah.
you go through an MD program and decide to become a NASA astronaut or so.
Yeah.
And it might be beneficial to not just have your medical experience, but to learn a little bit about the solar system too.
So many choices. Yeah, there's so many options, there's so many benefits from it. Um, okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that, I guess. So for a student who's interested but kind of unsure, I think you kind of answered this already. How and like why would you encourage them to just kind of take the jump and start?
Yeah, I would say that there are kind of two main answers that I have there. One is that if you're interested in research, the best way to explore your interest is just, yeah, really diving into it because the mentors at Rising Researchers, both myself as well as Dr. Jetty, as well as Lauren and Shvetali, are all very experienced working with students. And we help students learn how to go through the research process. So if students are kind of worried about not being able to latch on to the material, I like to say, don't worry, we'll make sure that this is really tailored for your experience and that you'll be set up for success. The other kind of part of that is that unless you really perform some project for yourself, you won't really know whether that's what you want to do in the future. Like the best way to learn is by doing. And that's true not just for absorbing like the material, but also in terms of understanding what it is that a student is most interested in, what they want to do in their future. So I would really encourage students, if you find yourself interested, just jump right in, and that's the best way to find out.
Awesome. Um, and then, if students are kind of unsure, they want to get into research, they're kind of unsure what topic to pursue.
Mhm.
Would you kind of base them off of what was readily available, or I guess how would you navigate them in that process?
Yeah, so part of the research course is helping them to learn how to come up with their own research questions and hypotheses. I do give some suggestions of topics that previous students have worked on, or especially with the advent of James Webb Space Telescope, what are the like most interesting unsolved puzzles that would be really, I would say, engaging and really cutting edge, something that not a lot of people have considered so far. James Webb Space Telescope has only been beyond the Earth since 2021, really 2022, when it began collecting data. And this is really a flagship mission, and there's really a lot that could be explored. And beyond James Webb Space Telescope, there are always new results, new experiments that are being performed by top researchers, and being able to dig into that literature is really where we start. And a lot of science is not really like Einstein in the patent office. A lot of research is done by piggybacking off of previous researchers. Sir Isaac Newton said, if I have seen farther, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. And really, that sort of idea of showing students all the beautiful pebbles along the beach of knowledge and allowing them to choose one for themselves to dive into is really what I try to strive for. So, if students are really unsure about what particular topic they want to pursue, don't worry. They're going to be given a lot of different opportunities and options that they can explore. And I always have students that are find themselves interested in one or two of the topics that we discuss in the first few sessions. Sometimes it's harder for a student to choose just one
Mm.
topic, but I can work with those students and say, all right, well, we just need to flip a coin, and you can always dig into that other topic in a subsequent research project. It's not like you only have to study one thing forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I love that analogy. I think a lot of times students want to be unique, they want to do something different. They don't want to do what other people did, but take what others have done and kind of go forward with it, like
Mm-hmm.
continue it versus, because we have to start somewhere, right? So go based off something we know that, like you said, the shoulders of giants or the pebbles on the beach, and then kind of expand and go further into those. I like that. Um, I think that's important for students making a decision. You're not
Yeah,
stuck, and you could always start to, I guess, like dive into one and then see how that goes, and then kind of backtrack as well. I deal with similar things with students who are getting ready to write their personal statement or some of their essays. They have a bunch of different ideas and they don't really know exactly how to navigate, but through counseling and kind of through your guidance, helping students kind of pick what is right for them and what's best for them.
yeah, and I guess the other part I'll mention here, Nicole, is that since I've worked with a pretty large number of students in the high school side, as well as obviously undergraduate students through my time as a professor, I've developed a sense of what is a feasible versus not as feasible of a project. So I try to make it clear to students, okay, these are the more advanced topics. Are you sure you want to pursue something like that? If it's your very first research project, maybe we can start with something a little bit more basic, and then you can go on to win the Nobel Prize in a few more years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, So I guess, and we've kind of already answered this a little bit as well, but how does doing this type of research or in general research early on help with college applications or future careers? I know you've mentioned a lot of your students have kind of used an intro or used, their work with you to kind of trajectory, you know, kind of push them into something bigger later on, right? Have this on their resume and then continue. But are there any other kind of skills that you think specifically apply to the college application process or future careers?
Yeah, so I would say part of that, Nicole, is not just having like the publication in their activities list or the recommendation letter as part of their college applications. I think that both of those do play major, major roles, but they're not definitive alone. The other major part that students gain from this research is the ability to write and convey information that they've learned. So I really think that writing a publication and performing research helps them also with crafting intelligently written personal statements and addressing the other special topics that were part of the supplementals for MIT or Caltech or Stanford this past year, for example, amongst other institutions. And aside from learning how to read and then write papers themselves, what I like to indicate, although the focus for this upcoming course is on literature reviews, I still like to indicate to students what the most cutting edge technology or cutting edge topics are within a field. And a lot of the students that I've done one on one research with have involved developing their own codes. And so part of that is they develop a GitHub presence. It's almost
Mm,
like having a LinkedIn for a lot of students that are interested in coding. And really, with the advent of AI, there's so many fields where coding is a part of our lives, even if we're more the orchestrator rather than the nose to grindstone coder ourselves these days. So
mhm.
having a GitHub really helps, I think, to stand out. Having developed these skills with utilizing AI in an ethical and effective manner, I think it is really useful. And then just it's almost like students that mention that they know how to play the violin or that they know how to speak French, being able to converse with someone in Python. We don't really do it person to person, but still having that ability, I think, really helps.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Just kind of building the resume, taking all the transferable skills that they have, putting it in, um, I guess GitHub kind of, I think the best way that I understand it is it's almost like a portfolio.
Yes.
Yeah, so kind of having it all there because you never know what opportunities will arise where you can kind of showcase to others, what you've done, what your experiences lie, and hopefully find some transferable skills along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other part about GitHub is because it's public and has timestamps, it's
Hmm.
really helpful, I think, for students demonstrating that this, their interest in research wasn't just something that they did a week before college applications were due, but it's
Mm,
something that they had a summer long experience or they had a maybe multiple year long experience. So setting up a GitHub repo in high school or like early on in their college careers shows that they have literally um, begun that journey in coding or that portfolio building. And it's not just about the number of projects that they've done, but how long they've been in that field. And so starting that as soon as possible, I think is really, really helpful.
yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Um, Awesome. So, your course, Searching for Life in the Universe, the intersection of astronomy and biology, it's 10 sessions and it'll be starting June 30th until July 31st. It's every Tuesday and Friday. I will have the link to register or even just the link to kind of see more on the website or and see the syllabus and everything in the description here. Um, but as we close out, is there anything more that you want to share, or just you want to share a little bit more about the course itself, um, or anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, so I'll mention a few quick
Yeah,
things,
for
Nicole.
sure.
One is that because this is a summer course and it's 10 sessions, this is really a great way to get a deep dive into astronomy, or really as the course says, the intersection of astronomy and biology in research. Whereas a lot of other programs, especially for undergraduate students, might be like a year long research project or even a 2 year long research project. This is a great way for students to really dive in and to explore their interests. For students that are in high school, the other benefit is that they really have this self contained within the summer. So rather than getting into, again, a more extended multi month research project where suddenly the school year starts and they're busy working on their AP classes or studying for the SATs or writing their college applications, everything from start of this research program to the end is contained within a summer month or a summer month plus a little bit. And therefore, they're able to, one, enjoy the other parts of their summer, of course, and rest and recharge for the upcoming year. But also, they're able to explore something that I hope that they're passionate about and get an interest in research and again have those. I know you mentioned it being almost like a check mark, but really a booster, I would say, to their resume or for their college or grad school applications.
Awesome. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I said, Rising Researchers has been around for quite a few years now. It's been a great program, and we're really excited to have this as a brand new topic for this summer. So check it out. Check out the syllabus. Like I said, I'll put the link in the description below to both, check out the Rising Researchers website and, learn a little bit more about Dr. Ryan and his course syllabus. Um, but thank you so much for coming on today and sharing. And I guess everyone will kind of look forward to learning more about you soon.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Nicole. It was great chatting with you, and definitely looking forward to working with a lot of bright eyes and bright minds coming forward.
Awesome.